The olive green jacket left Henry's shoulders at 11:47 p.m. on the coldest night of the year. He didn't know the shivering woman at the bus stop was Claire Langston, CEO of Infinity Group, worth $340 million, featured in Forbes just last week. He only saw someone freezing breath, crystallizing in the brutal wind arms, wrapped tight around herself. What he couldn't see was the hand-drawn picture in his jacket pocket, a crayon sketch his son Noah had made years ago titled Dad and Me. That picture would shatter Claire's carefully constructed world within hours. One small act, two broken people, a choice that would rewrite everything. Stay with me until the end of this story, and drop a comment with your city, so I can see how far this journey has traveled. The night everything shifted. The wind screamed through the steel canyon of 47th Street like a living thing furious and hungry. Henry Miles pressed himself against the bus shelter's scratched plexiglass, but it offered no real protection. February in New York didn't just bring cold, it brought the kind of bone-deep freeze that made you question every decision that led you to this exact moment. He'd been at this particular stop for 40 minutes. The digital display had cycled through 3 different estimated arrival times, each one a lie. First it promised 11:15, then 11:30. Now it just blinked delayed in angry red letters like it had given up pretending. Henry shifted his weight, feeling the ache in his left knee, the souvenir from the construction accident that had started his downward spiral 18 months ago. His old Volvo was parked 6 blocks away in a lot that turned a blind eye to overnight vehicles, but he couldn't bring himself to walk back yet. The shelter's harsh fluorescent lights felt like the last outpost of civilization before he returned to sleeping in his car. Again. He wasn't supposed to be here. 3 years ago, he'd been a structural engineer with Morrison & Klein, designing the skeleton of skyscrapers, calculating load-bearing dreams in steel and concrete. He'd had a brownstone in Park Slope, a son in private school, a wife who smiled at him across the breakfast table. Then Sarah got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the kind that moved fast and showed no mercy. The medical bills came like an avalanche: $80,000, then $150,000, then numbers that stopped making sense. He'd burned through their savings, then the 401k, then started borrowing. Sarah died on a Tuesday morning in April, holding his hand, whispering, "Take care of Noah," with her last conscious breath. After that, the world became a series of falling dominoes. The grief made him unreliable at work. He missed deadlines, made calculation errors on the Riverside project that could have been catastrophic. Morrison let him go, with regret and understanding. The brownstone went next, couldn't make the mortgage payments. Then the apartment. Then the room in Queens. Now he had a 2004 Volvo with 186,000 miles and a parking lot attendant named Luis, who pretended not to notice when Henry didn't leave at closing time. Noah was the only thing he'd protected. 15 years old now, living with Sarah's sister Margaret upstate, finishing his sophomore year at a decent public school. Henry sent money when he could visit it, when he had gas money. Told himself it was temporary. Told himself he'd claw his way back. The shelter's lights flickered. Once. Twice. Henry looked up, praying they wouldn't die completely. The temperature had dropped to 19 degrees according to his phone. With wind chill, it felt like something that could kill you. That's when he heard the footsteps. Sharp, rhythmic, expensive heels on concrete, moving fast but unsteady. Henry turned and saw her emerging from the darkness between streetlights, a woman in a charcoal business dress and a thin blazer. No coat, arms wrapped around herself, moving like someone fleeing something. She stumbled into the shelter, and Henry got his first clear look at her face. Early 30s, he guessed. Dark hair plastered to her head from melted snow. No hat, no gloves, no scarf. Her lips had a bluish tint that Henry recognized from his engineering days working winter construction sites. Early-stage hypothermia. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered audibly. "Jesus!" He said the word escaping before he could stop it. The woman's eyes snapped to him wide and glazed. For a moment she looked like she might run. Then another gust of wind hit, and she just wrapped her arms tighter, turning away from him to face the street. Henry knew that posture. It was the universal body language of someone who didn't want to be seen, didn't want to talk, didn't want anything except to disappear. He should leave it alone. Should mind his business. He had enough problems without getting involved in someone else's disaster. But he'd been a father for 15 years. Some instincts ran deeper than common sense. "Miss," he said quietly. "You okay?" She didn't turn around. "I'm fine." Her voice was controlled professional, but it shook at the edges. And fine was the biggest lie anyone ever told. "That's—" Henry started, then stopped. What was he going to say? "That's not true. You're clearly freezing." She wasn't stupid. She knew. "The bus is running late," he finished lamely. "I noticed." Silence settled between them, broken only by the wind and the distant wail of a police siren. Henry watched her from the corner of his eye. She kept checking her phone, but not like someone waiting for a message, like someone confirming it wouldn't ring. Each time she lowered it, her shoulders dropped a fraction more. 5 minutes passed. Her shaking got worse. She shifted from foot to foot, trying to generate warmth, but those thin heels and bare legs were suicide in this weather. Henry felt something twist in his chest. It was the same feeling he got when Noah was little and scraped his knee, or when Sarah was in pain and the morphine hadn't kicked in yet. The helpless need to do something even when nothing could be done. Except something could be done. He knew exactly what could be done. Henry looked down at his jacket. Olive green military surplus, the warmest thing he owned. He'd bought it for $18 at the Salvation Army on Amsterdam Avenue 3 months ago. The lining was intact, the zipper still worked, and it had deep pockets. It was the difference between surviving winter in the car and not surviving. He should not give this away. Logically, practically rationally, he should not. Henry took off his jacket. The cold hit him like a physical force stealing his breath. He wore only a flannel shirt underneath, and within seconds, the wind was cutting through it like it wasn't there. His hands moved before his brain could override them, folding the jacket, stepping toward her. "Miss—" She turned, eyes wary, and saw what he was holding. "No." The word was immediate, sharp. "You're freezing." "I don't need—" "It's 19 degrees. Henry kept his voice soft the way he talked to Noah when his son was being stubborn. "You're shaking so hard I can hear your teeth from here. The bus could be another hour." Claire, though he didn't know her name yet, stared at the jacket like it might bite her. "I can't take your coat." "It's not a coat, just a jacket." Like the distinction mattered. "You'll freeze." "I've got a car nearby." The lie came easily because he'd been practicing lies for 18 months. Little ones, necessary ones, the kind that let you keep your dignity. 6 blocks. I'll walk there after the bus comes. She looked at him, then really looked. And Henry saw the exact moment she cataloged everything: the worn jeans, the scuffed work boots, the flannel shirt with a frayed collar. The calculation happening behind her eyes: he can't afford to give this away. "Please." He held the jacket out, and his hands were already starting to shake. "Just for the bus ride. I'll feel like shit watching you freeze when I've got this." The profanity did it oddly. Some curse words are honest, and she heard that honesty. Claire reached out with trembling fingers and took the jacket. "Thank you," she whispered. Henry stepped back quickly before he could change his mind. "It's nothing." But they both knew it wasn't nothing. Claire pulled the jacket on, and it swallowed her, too big in the shoulder sleeves hanging past her hands. She buried her face in the collar for a moment, and Henry saw her eyes close. When she opened them again, they were shining. "I'm Claire," she said. "Henry." She nodded, hugging the jacket tighter. "Henry, thank you." The shelter lights flickered again. In the distance, finally Henry could see the headlights of the M42 bus grinding its way through the snow. "That your bus?" he asked. I think so. The bus pulled up with a hydraulic sigh, doors folding open. The driver looked half asleep. Claire moved toward the doors, then stopped. She reached into her own jacket pocket, designer probably cost more than Henry's car, and pulled out a business card. Her hands were still shaking as she pressed it into his palm. "Please," she said. "Come see me tomorrow. My office. I need to." She couldn't finish the sentence. Her eyes were brimming now, and Henry had no idea why. "Just please." The driver leaned on the horn. "Lady, you coming?" Claire climbed the steps, turned back once looking at Henry through the scratched doors. The bus pulled away, and she pressed one hand against the window, a gesture that looked like goodbye, or maybe apology. Henry stood in the empty shelter, the wind carving into him, and looked at the card in his hand. The printing was raised expensive. Claire Langston, Chief Executive Officer, Infinity Group. Below it, an address on Park Avenue that made Henry's stomach drop. He knew that building. Glass tower, 57 floors, the kind of place where security escorted you out if you even looked poor. Why had she given him this? The cold was becoming unbearable. Henry turned and started the 6-block walk back to his car, each step an exercise in willpower. His teeth started chattering before he made it 2 blocks. By block 4, he couldn't feel his fingers. At block 5, he seriously considered just lying down in the snow. But he reached the car. Always reached the car. That was the one promise he made himself every night he'd reach the car. Luis was gone for the night. The lot was nearly empty. Henry unlocked the Volvo and climbed into the back seat, where he'd rigged a setup that was almost comfortable if you didn't think about it too hard. Sleeping bag from Sarah's camping phase. Pillow from the old apartment. A rolled-up jacket as a headrest, except he didn't have that jacket anymore. He pulled the sleeping bag around himself, but it wasn't enough. Without the jacket, nothing was enough. Henry's phone buzzed. Text from Noah. "Dad, you awake, always for you." Henry typed back with numb fingers. "What's up?" "Nothing, just wanted to say goodnight." Henry stared at those words until they blurred. Noah knew. 15 years old and too smart for his own good, he knew his father was sleeping in a car, knew Aunt Margaret was paying for everything, knew his dad was barely holding on. And still, Noah texted every night. Still said "I love you" without hesitation. Still drew pictures and sent photos and pretended everything would be okay. "Good night, bud," Henry typed. "I love you more than anything in this world." The response was immediate. "Love you too, Dad." Henry set the phone down and lay back, trying to find a position where his knee didn't scream and the cold didn't penetrate. He closed his eyes and tried not to think about the jacket or the woman or the business card in his pocket. Instead, he thought about Sarah, their wedding day, the brownstone, Noah as a baby, the sound of his son's laugh. He built a museum of memory to live in because the present was uninhabitable. He was almost asleep when his hand brushed something in the sleeping bag. A piece of paper folded many times over. Henry pulled it out confused, then remembered. Noah had given it to him 3 weeks ago during one of his visits. "I made this when I was 7, Noah had said. "Aunt Margaret found it in a box. I thought you might want it." Henry unfolded it now using his phone's flashlight. Crayon on construction paper, a stick figure man, and a smaller stick figure holding hands, smiling their crooked smiles. The sky was bright blue. The sun had a face. At the bottom, in careful 7-year-old letters, "Dad and me." Something broke in Henry's chest. A sound came out that might have been a laugh, or a sob, or both. He pressed the drawing to his chest and finally let himself cry quiet, exhausted tears that he'd been holding back for 18 months. He didn't know that across the city, in a penthouse apartment that cost more per month than he used to make in a year, Claire Langston was holding his jacket and crying too. Claire's world. The penthouse was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Minimalist furniture in shades of white and gray. Art that cost more than most people's houses. Everything perfect. Everything empty. Claire stood at the window, still wearing Henry's jacket, watching snow fall on a city that never slept. She'd left her own jacket in the taxi. Not forgotten, it left it deliberately, like she was shedding a skin. The board meeting had gone exactly as planned. Infinity Group was acquiring Markham Technologies for $1.8 billion. 6 months of negotiations, 3 weeks of due diligence, 72 hours of final paperwork. Claire had been in conference rooms since Monday morning. She'd slept 4 hours total. She'd eaten nothing but coffee and ambition. At 10:47 p.m. she'd stood before the board and delivered the final presentation. The numbers were immaculate. The strategy was flawless. The acquisition would increase Infinity's market share by 23%, eliminate a key competitor, and position them for the Asian expansion she'd been planning for 2 years. The board voted unanimously in favor. Champagne appeared. Congratulations echoed around the mahogany table. Douglas Chen, the chairman, actually smiled at her. "This is why we made you CEO," he said. "You're a killer, Claire." A killer. She'd smiled and nodded and said all the right things. Then she'd walked out at 11:15, told her driver she'd get her own ride home, and started walking. She didn't know why. Didn't plan it. Just started walking in her designer dress and 3-inch heels through streets she never saw from her town car, past people she never noticed. The cold felt real. The wind felt honest. Everything else felt like a performance she'd been giving so long she'd forgotten how to stop. Then she'd found herself at that bus stop freezing, and a homeless man had given her his only jacket. Except he wasn't homeless. Was he? She'd seen the calculation in his eyes when he handed over the jacket, the same calculation she made every day in boardrooms. The cost-benefit analysis. What he was giving up, what it meant. She'd seen something else too. Kindness without expectation. Help without agenda. When was the last time someone had helped her without wanting something Claire couldn't remember? She took off the jacket, slowly handling it like something precious. It was worn, but clean. The fabric was soft from many washings. She hung it on the back of her desk chair, and that's when something fell out of the inside pocket. A piece of paper folded small. Claire picked it up, unfolded it, and felt her world tilt. Crayon drawing. Stick figures. Dad and me. Her hands started shaking again, but not from cold. She knew this drawing. Not this specific one, but she knew it. The careful crooked letters. The smiling sun. The way a child draws love before the world teaches them what love costs. Claire sank into her desk chair, still holding the drawing. She was 7 years old again, standing in the emergency room of St. Vincent's Hospital, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like disinfectant. Her mother had been gone for 3 days. The police found Claire alone in their apartment. No food in the fridge. Heat turned off in December. A social worker was processing paperwork. A doctor was asking questions Claire didn't know how to answer. And a janitor, an old black man, whose name she never learned, brought her a cup of hot chocolate and his own coat because they'd run out of blankets. "You're going to be okay, little one," he'd said. "This isn't the end of your story." She'd worn that coat for 3 hours until the social worker took her to the first foster home. She never saw the janitor again. Never got to say thank you. Never got to tell him he was right. But she'd never forgotten. Claire hadn't thought about that night in years. She'd built her entire adult life on not thinking about it. Got herself into Columbia on scholarship. Clawed her way up through finance. Made herself indispensable, irreplaceable, untouchable. Became the youngest CEO in Infinity Group's history at 32. She'd turned trauma into triumph, just like every self-help book said you should. Except she'd also turned into someone who couldn't remember the last time she cried. Who worked 90-hour weeks and called it dedication. Who had a penthouse apartment and no one to share it with. Who'd just closed a $1 billion deal and felt nothing except empty. Looking at Noah's drawing, Claire understood something she'd been avoiding for years. She was lost. Successful, powerful, wealthy, and completely, utterly lost. The tears came suddenly and wouldn't stop. Claire pressed the drawing to her chest, pressed her face to Henry's jacket, and sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body, that felt like something breaking open that had needed to break for a very long time. She cried for the little girl in the hospital, for the janitor whose name she never learned, for Henry giving away his jacket in 19-degree weather, for Noah drawing pictures of his dad, for every kind thing she'd been too busy to notice for the past 10 years. When the storm finally passed, Claire sat up. Her face was swollen. Her makeup was destroyed. She looked like a disaster. She felt more human than she had in years. Claire picked up her phone and opened the Find My Ride app. She scrolled through her ride history until she found tonight's trip. The taxi's dash cam footage could be accessed by riders for security purposes. She downloaded the file and fast-forwarded to when she got out. There, the bus stop. She could see herself walking away, could see Henry in his jacket. She watched as he took it off and held it out, watched herself resist, then accept, watched the bus arrive. But what she watched most carefully was after the bus left. Henry standing alone in his flannel shirt, shaking in the cold. Henry looking at her business card with an expression she recognized, disbelief mixed with hope. The look of someone who'd stopped expecting good things. Henry walking away into the darkness, hugging himself, trying to make his body small against the wind. Claire replayed that segment 3 times. Then she took a screenshot and sent it to her assistant with a message timestamped 1:47 a.m. Linda, top priority for tomorrow morning. Find this man. His name is Henry. Bus stop on 47th yesterday, 11:45 p.m. Pull traffic cameras, bus logs, whatever you need. Find him. Confidential. Tell no one. She set down the phone and looked at the drawing again. I'm going to find you, she said to the stick figures. And then I'm going to figure out how to thank you. But even as she said it, Claire knew it wasn't about thanks. This was about something bigger, about the little girl in the hospital who needed more janitors with kind hearts, about the man in the cold who deserved better than sleeping in a car, about a world that had made both of them in different ways invisible. Claire walked to her window and looked out at Manhattan, a city of 8 million invisible people, each one carrying their own crayon drawings, their own frozen nights, their own small acts of desperate kindness. For 10 years, she'd been a CEO. She'd made shareholders rich. She'd closed deals. She'd climbed ladders. But she'd forgotten why any of it mattered. Henry had reminded her in the space of 5 minutes. A stranger in an olive green jacket had done what 10 years of success couldn't do, made her feel something real. Claire pressed her hand to the window, the glass cold against her palm. Somewhere out there, Henry was sleeping in his car, probably regretting giving away his only warm jacket. Probably thinking he'd never hear from her again. He was wrong. Claire Langston hadn't become CEO of Infinity Group by letting things go, and she wasn't about to start now. She walked to her desk and opened her laptop. 2:14 a.m. She typed 3 words into a blank document. Project Human Values. Then she started writing. A plan. A program. An entire initiative that would change how Infinity Group thought about success. Not just profit margins and market share. People. Real people. People like Henry. People like the janitor. People like she used to be. The sun was rising when she finally stopped. 6,000 words. A complete overhaul of Infinity's corporate culture. It was ambitious. It was radical. The board would resist. Claire didn't care. She saved the document, closed the laptop, and looked at Noah's drawing one more time. Thank you, she whispered to stick figure Henry and stick figure Noah. Thank you for reminding me. Then she went to her bedroom, lay down on top of the covers, still wearing Henry's jacket, and slept better than she had in 10 years. Henry woke to someone knocking on his car window. For a disoriented moment, he didn't know where he was. Then reality crashed back the Volvo the parking lot, the cold that had seeped into his bones overnight. His neck ached from the angle he'd slept at. His knee throbbed, and someone was still knocking. He sat up, blinking against the morning light, and saw a woman in a long camel coat standing outside the driver's side window. Not Claire. This woman was older, maybe 50, with silver-streaked hair, and an expression that managed to be both professional and concerned. Henry rolled down the window a crack. "Can I help you, Mr. Miles?" Her voice was warm, careful. "My name is Linda Chen. I work for Claire Langston. She asked me to find you." Henry's stomach dropped. He glanced at the back seat, at his sleeping bag and pillow, at the evidence of his life that he couldn't hide. How did you? Traffic cameras from last night, bus logs. It took some work." Linda's expression softened. "Ms. Langston would like to see you this morning, if you're willing." "I don't understand." "Neither do I entirely. But I've worked for Claire for 6 years, and I've never seen her like she was this morning." Linda pulled an envelope from her coat pocket. "She asked me to give you this, and to tell you there's no obligation, no pressure, just an invitation." Henry took the envelope with shaking hands, from cold or nerves he couldn't tell. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Henry, please come to my office, 10 a.m. If you can. I have your jacket and I need to talk to you about something important. If you can't make it or don't want to, I understand, but I hope you'll come. Claire." Below it was an address he recognized from the business card, and below that, folded, were 5 $20 bills. "She said you might need breakfast," Linda said quietly, "and cab fare." Henry stared at the money. His pride screamed at him to refuse it. His stomach, which hadn't had a proper meal in 2 days, had different ideas. "I found something in the jacket," Henry said, his voice rough. "A drawing. My son made it." "She knows. She has it safe." Linda paused. "Mr. Miles, I don't know what happened last night. Claire won't tell me. But I've never seen her cry at the office before this morning. Whatever you did, it mattered." Linda handed him another envelope, smaller. "There's a key card in here. It'll get you through security and up to the executive floor. 10th Avenue entrance, ask for me at the desk. I'll take you up." "I don't have—" Henry gestured at himself. Yesterday's clothes wrinkled from sleeping in them. 3 days of stubble. Work boots with salt stains. "I'm not exactly dressed for Park Avenue." "You're dressed like someone who gave away his only jacket to a stranger." Linda's smile was genuine. "That's dressed well enough for Claire Langston, trust me." She walked back to a sleek black car idling at the lot's entrance. Henry watched her go, then looked at the note again. At the money. At the key card. He could drive away right now. Pretend last night never happened. Stay in his comfortable misery. Or he could take a chance on something he didn't understand. Henry checked the time on his phone. 7:23 a.m. He had 2.5 hours. He started the Volvo, it coughed twice before catching, and drove to the YMCA on West 63rd. $15 got him a day pass and access to the showers. He stood under hot water for 20 minutes, washing away the parking lot and the cold and the accumulated grime of invisible living. He shaved with a disposable razor, combed his hair, put on his one clean shirt, the blue button-down he saved for job interviews that never went anywhere. Looking in the mirror, Henry saw someone who almost looked put together, someone who might belong in a Park Avenue office. Almost. He used 30 of Claire's dollars for breakfast at a diner. Eggs, toast, coffee, orange juice, the works. The food tasted like hope, which was dangerous. Hope had let him down so many times he'd learned to live without it. But the note was in his pocket. The key card was in his hand. And at 9:47 a.m., Henry stood outside the Infinity Group building, staring up at 57 floors of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the clouds. The lobby was all marble and modern art. Security guards in suits that cost more than Henry's car. Beautiful people moving with purpose, their shoes clicking on polished floors. Henry felt every eye turn toward him as he approached the desk. Felt the security guard's assessment. Slightly worn clothes. Nervous energy doesn't belong here. "I'm here to see Linda Chen," Henry said, keeping his voice steady. "She's expecting me." The guard looked skeptical until Henry produced the keycard. Something changed in the man's expression. "Ms. Chen, yes, sir. She left word." He picked up a phone. "Ms. Chen, your guest is here." Linda appeared within 2 minutes, moving fast, her heels rapid fire on marble. "Henry, thank you for coming. Follow me." She led him past security, past the judgment, into an elevator with mirrors on all sides. Henry caught his reflection and looked away. Linda pressed the button for the 57th floor. "How nervous are you?" Linda asked as the elevator climbed. "Terrified." "Good. That means you care." The elevator chimed softly at each floor. "Claire's nervous too, if it helps. She reorganized her office 3 times this morning." "Why?" "Because whatever's happening here matters to her, and Claire doesn't let things matter easily." The elevator opened onto a different world. The 57th floor was quiet, elegant, all glass walls and tasteful art. A receptionist smiled at them. "Ms. Chen, Ms. Langston is in her office." Linda guided Henry down a corridor, lined with windows overlooking Manhattan. He could see Central Park from here, a rectangle of winter-brown trees surrounded by the concrete forest. They passed a conference room, where executives in $1,000 suits discussed something on a screen full of graphs. Then Linda stopped at a door, frosted glass, simple brass handle, a nameplate that read, "Claire Langston, CEO." "She asked to see you alone," Linda said. "I'll be right outside if you need anything." She knocked twice, opened the door. "Claire, Henry's here." Claire stood behind her desk, backlit by floor-to-ceiling windows. She'd changed since last night. Pencil skirt, silk blouse, hair pulled back, but her eyes were the same. Vulnerable, uncertain, human. "Henry." She smiled, and it transformed her face. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." Linda closed the door, leaving them alone. Henry sat in a chair that probably cost more than his monthly income used to be. Claire sat across from him, not behind her desk, but in the matching chair like they were equals. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. "I have your jacket," Claire said, gesturing to where it hung on a coat rack. "I should have led with that." "You didn't have to find me." "Yes, I did." Claire leaned forward, her hands clasped. "Henry, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen, because if I stop talking, I might lose my nerve." Henry nodded. "Last night was the worst and best night I've had in 10 years. Worst because I closed a $1 billion deal and felt nothing. Best because a stranger gave me his jacket and I felt everything." Her voice wavered. "I found your son's drawing." Henry's breath caught. "It was in the pocket. I saw it when I got home." Claire pulled the drawing from her desk drawer, handled it like something sacred. "This broke me open, Henry, in the best way." She told him then. About the hospital when she was 7, about the janitor and his coat, about growing up in foster care, clawing her way up building walls so high she forgot what it felt like to be human, about standing at her penthouse window at 2 in the morning, crying for the first time in years because a homeless man taught her what success actually meant. "I'm not homeless," Henry interrupted quietly. Claire looked at him. "I mean, technically I am. I sleep in my car, but I'm not." He struggled for words. "I'm not what you think." "Tell me." So Henry did. He told her about Sarah, about the cancer, about the medical bills that swallowed everything, about being a structural engineer, about the accident, about the grief that made him unreliable, about losing the job, the brownstone, the apartments, the slow slide into a Volvo and a parking lot, about Noah living upstate because that was safest, about the daily calculations, gas or food phone bill or shower dignity or survival. I gave you my jacket because that's what my wife would have wanted, Henry finished. Because that's what I want Noah to think fathers do. Not because I'm some kind of saint. I'm just a guy who's completely screwed up his life. Silence filled the office. Through the windows, New York hummed with indifferent life. You know what I see, Claire said finally. A structural engineer who knows how to build things. A father who loves his son enough to sacrifice everything. A man who gave his only jacket to a stranger in 19-degree weather. She paused. I see someone who understands what actually matters. With respect, Ms. Langston. Claire, I don't understand why I'm here. Because I want to offer you a job. Henry laughed. He couldn't help it. I'm not qualified to clean offices in this building. You're qualified for what I need. Claire stood paced to the window. I'm creating a new position. Human Values Advisor. Someone who keeps me honest. Who reminds me what we're actually building here. Who makes sure Infinity Group doesn't lose sight of people in the pursuit of profit. That's not a real job. It is now. I'm making it real. She turned back to him. Henry, I run a company worth $7 billion. We employ 14,000 people. We affect hundreds of thousands of lives through our investments and acquisitions. And last night I realized I've been doing it all wrong. You're one of the most successful CEOs in the country. By what metric? Money market share? Claire's voice hardened with conviction. I want to redefine what success means, and I can't do it alone. I need someone who understands what it costs to survive. What it means to make impossible choices. What actually matters when everything else falls away. Henry shook his head. You don't know me. I could be a con artist. This could be an elaborate scam. Is it? No, but you don't know that. Actually, Linda ran a background check this morning. I hope you don't mind. Claire's expression was apologetic. Henry James Miles, born 1979, Masters in Structural Engineering from Cooper Union. 10 years at Morrison & Klein, exemplary record. Wife Sarah died 18 months ago. Son Noah, 15, honor roll student living with his aunt. No criminal record, no red flags. Just... Her voice softened. A lot of tragedy that wasn't your fault. Henry felt exposed naked under fluorescent lights. That's invasive. It is. I'm sorry. But I had to know who I was inviting into my company. Claire returned to her chair. Here's what I'm offering. $60,000 a year to start. Benefits. Office on this floor. Your job is to sit in meetings and tell me when we're being assholes. To remind executives that numbers represent people. To help me build programs that actually help instead of just looking good on paper. 60,000. Henry's mind stuttered over the number. It was less than he'd made as an engineer, but it was more than he'd seen in 18 months. It was Noah coming home. It was an apartment. It was dignity. I can't accept charity, he said. It's not charity. It's the hardest job in this building. Claire met his eyes. Every executive here is going to resent you. They'll think you're a pet project. They'll test you, undermine you, wait for you to fail. You'll be the conscience of a company that's been operating without one. That's not charity, Henry. That's combat. Why me? Because you gave me your jacket. Simple. True. Because you did the right thing when it cost you everything. Because your son draws pictures of you and you keep them in your pocket. Claire's voice broke slightly. Because I was 7 years old in a hospital once, and a janitor gave me his coat and it saved my life. And I never got to say thank you. So maybe this is me saying thank you. 30 years late. To someone who needs it. Henry looked at his hands. Rough palms, scarred knuckles. Hands that used to calculate load-bearing weights and now counted dollar bills to see if he could afford lunch. What if I fail? Then you fail, but I don't think you will. What if your board hates this idea? They probably will, but I'm the CEO. I get to make calls they hate sometimes. Claire smiled. That's the fun part of the job. Henry thought about Noah, about sleeping in the car, about 18 months of slow drowning, about Sarah's last words, "Take care of Noah," about the life he'd lost and the life he might reclaim. He thought about the jacket and the drawing and the janitor Claire never forgot. "Can I think about it?" he asked. Something flickered in Claire's expression. Disappointment, maybe, or fear. "Of course. Take all the time you need." "I mean like 24 hours, not forever." Henry managed a smile. "This is a lot to process. Yesterday I gave my jacket to a woman at a bus stop. Today she's offering me a job that doesn't make sense. I need to sleep on something other than a back seat before I make life decisions." "That's fair." Claire stood, and Henry did too. She walked to the coat rack and took down his jacket. "Before you go, I need to show you something." She led him out of her office down the corridor past Linda, who gave him an encouraging nod. They took the elevator down 3 floors. The doors opened onto a different atmosphere, bustling, energetic, younger. The 48th floor. Claire guided him through an open-plan workspace where 20-somethings worked at standing desks and sat on yoga balls. Into a smaller corridor, past a break room, to a door marked Community Outreach. "This is what your job would actually support," Claire said, opening the door. Inside was a converted office space, but not for work. Comfortable chairs, a small kitchen, bookshelves, a computer station, and on the wall photographs, families, children, people rebuilding lives. "This is Thomas's place," Claire said quietly. "I started it 5 years ago. Named it after the janitor, even though I never knew his last name. It's a community center for Infinity employees and their families going through hard times. Emergency assistance, counseling referrals, job placement, childcare support." Henry stared at the photos. Real people, real help. "Right now it's small, underfunded. Most executives forget it exists." Claire touched one of the photographs, a woman with 2 kids, all of them smiling. "I want to expand it. Not just for employees, but for the community. Emergency housing, job training, support for single parents. But I can't do it while running a company that's only focused on quarterly earnings. I need someone who understands what people actually need, who can build programs that matter." She turned to him. "That's the real job, Henry. Not sitting in meetings, building this, making sure Infinity Group becomes the kind of company that gives coats to people in hospitals, that sees people instead of numbers." Henry walked to the wall of photos, studied each face, saw himself in every one of them, people fighting, surviving, hoping. "The woman with the 2 kids," he said. "What's her story?" "Rachel. Her husband died in a construction accident. We helped her get certified as a paralegal. She works on the 32nd floor now. Her kids are in college." "And him?" Henry pointed to an older man. "Marcus. Laid off at 58, couldn't find work. We retrained him in IT support. He heads our help desk." Story after story, lives rebuilt, people seen. "How many?" Henry asked. "We've helped 43 families in 5 years. I want to help 400. 4,000. Claire's voice was fierce with conviction. "But I need allies. I need people who understand what it's like to need help. Who can design programs that actually work, instead of just looking good in press releases." Henry understood then. This wasn't charity. This was war. A war for the soul of a company, for a different definition of success, for the belief that corporations could be more than profit machines. "The board really hates this, don't they?" he said, passionately. "They tolerate Thomas's place because it's small enough to ignore. Anything bigger will be a fight. And you're asking me to help you fight that fight. I'm asking you to lead it." Claire met his eyes. "Because you understand the stakes in a way I never can." I crawled out. "You're still in it. That perspective is invaluable." They stood in Thomas's place, surrounded by evidence that change was possible, that help could matter, that one person's kindness could ripple forward through years and lives. 24 hours, Henry said. I need to talk to my son. Of course. Claire handed him his jacket. Your drawing's in the inside pocket. I made a copy for myself. I hope that's okay. Henry put on the jacket and felt instantly warmer. Thank you for keeping it safe. Thank you for the reminder that I needed. Claire walked him back to the elevator. Linda was waiting with a manila folder. Transportation information, Linda explained, handing it to Henry. If you decide to take the position, we'll provide temporary housing while you get settled. There's also a stipend for immediate needs, and a phone number where you can reach me anytime. The elevator arrived. Henry stepped in, then held the door. Can I ask you something? Anything, Claire said. Why are you really doing this? The truth? Claire was quiet for a moment. Because I stood in a hospital when I was 7 wearing a janitor's coat and thought maybe the world wasn't entirely cruel. Then I spent 25 years forgetting that feeling. Last night you reminded me. Her eyes were bright. I don't want to forget again, and I can't do this alone. The elevator doors closed. Henry rode down 54 floors, his head spinning. In his pocket, Noah's drawing. In his hand, information about a life he'd stopped imagining was possible. In his chest, something dangerous and fragile hope. He walked out into the February cold, but it didn't bite the way it had yesterday. The jacket helped. The possibility helped more. Henry found a coffee shop, ordered something expensive for once, a latte with real milk, and sat by the window. He pulled out his phone and called Noah. Dad! Noah sounded surprised. It was a school day. Henry never called during school. Is everything okay? I need your advice on something. On what? Henry told him. Not everything. Noah didn't need the details about the bus stop or the car, but the important parts. About meeting someone, about a job offer, about a chance to rebuild. Dad, Noah said when he finished, and Henry heard his voice crack with emotion. Are you crying right now? What, no? Henry wiped his eyes. Maybe. Take the job. It's complicated. Dad, take the job. Noah's voice was fierce, protective, more adult than 15 had any right to be. You've been trying to fight your way back alone for a year and a half. Let someone help you, please. What if I fail? Then you fail, but at least you'll fail trying instead of drowning in the parking lot. Noah paused. Mom would want you to try. The words hit Henry like a physical blow. Sarah would want him to try. Sarah, who'd faced cancer with stubborn optimism, who'd believed in second chances, who'd made him promise on her deathbed to keep living. When did you get so wise? Henry asked. I have a pretty good dad, even when he's sleeping in a car and pretending I don't know. Henry closed his eyes. I love you more than anything in this world. I know. Love you too. Now go call that lady and tell her yes before she changes her mind. They talked for another 10 minutes about school and basketball and normal things that felt miraculous, because they could imagine a future where these conversations happened in person, in an apartment over dinner at an actual table. When they hung up, Henry sat with his coffee and watched people pass the window. Busy people, purposeful people, people with jobs and homes and lives that made sense. Yesterday, he'd been invisible to them. Tomorrow, maybe, he'd be one of them. He pulled out the manila folder Linda had given him. Inside was information about corporate housing, a list of professional clothes retailers with account numbers already set up, a subway map with the Infinity Building highlighted, and a phone. Not his cheap prepaid. A smartphone new in the box, with a note in Claire's handwriting. You'll need this. It's on the company plan. My number's already programmed in. C. Henry stared at the phone, at the folder, at the reflection of himself in the coffee shop window, a man at a crossroads holding possibilities he'd thought were gone forever. He pulled out his old phone and found Claire's number from the business card. His thumb hovered over the call button. This was it. The moment. Say yes, and everything changes. Say no, and at least the pain is familiar. Henry thought about Sarah, about Noah, about the janitor whose name Claire never learned, about the choice to be kind, even when kindness cost everything. He pressed call. Claire answered on the first ring. Henry? I talked to my son, he said. He told me to take the job. And what do you say? Henry looked at his reflection one more time. Saw a structural engineer, a father, a man who gave away his jacket because that's what decent people do, a man who might possibly deserve a second chance. I say yes, Henry said. When do I start? The joy in Claire's voice was unmistakable. Tomorrow too soon. Tomorrow's perfect. Henry's first day at Infinity Group started with a suit that fit perfectly, and a growing sense that he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Linda had taken him shopping the afternoon before Brooks Brothers because Claire insisted her human values advisor needed to look the part. The salesman measured him with professional efficiency, never once asking why Henry's hands shook when he saw the price tags. Linda just handed over a company card and said, 3 suits, 6 shirts, appropriate shoes, and a winter coat that actually works. Now Henry stood in front of the mirror in his temporary corporate apartment, furnished clean, warm-wearing charcoal gray wool and polished leather, looking like someone who belonged in a Park Avenue tower. The illusion was perfect. Terrifying. His phone buzzed. The new one, not his old prepaid that sat in a drawer like a museum piece of his former life. Text from Claire sent at 6:47 a.m. Coffee in my office before the chaos starts. Linda knows you're coming. No pressure, just wanted to see how you're feeling. C. Henry texted back with fingers that still weren't used to the responsive touchscreen. Nervous. Is that normal? The response was immediate. Completely. I'm nervous too. See you at 7:30. He arrived at Infinity at 7:15, partly because the subway was faster than he expected, partly because waiting in the apartment felt like drowning. Linda met him at reception with coffee already in hand, black the way he'd had it yesterday, because she paid attention to details. Deep breath, she said, guiding him to the elevator. Today's just introductions, meeting the team, getting oriented. Nobody expects you to solve world hunger before lunch. What do they expect? Honestly, most of them expect you to fail within a month. Linda's bluntness was oddly comforting. Claire's shaking things up. People hate change. They'll be watching you. The 57th floor was already alive with activity despite the early hour. Executives in expensive suits moved with purpose, voices low and urgent. Henry felt every eye track him as he walked past the new guy, the charity case, the homeless man Claire dragged in from the cold. He could hear the whispers even when they were silent. Claire's office door was open. She stood at her window staring out at the city with a coffee cup in both hands, and Henry recognized the posture immediately. His mother used to stand like that when she was gathering courage. You can go in, Linda said gently. I'll be at my desk if you need anything. Henry knocked on the open door. Claire turned, and her professional mask slipped for just a second. Relief. Maybe even joy. Henry, thank you for coming early. I wanted to talk before the wolves descend. She gestured to the chairs by the window. How was your first night in actual housing? Surreal. I kept waking up thinking I'd dreamed it. Henry sat the leather chair, sighing beneath him. I called Noah, told him everything. He wants to meet you. I'd like that. Claire smiled, then it faded. I need to prepare you for today. It's going to be ugly. Ugly how? The executive team meets every Wednesday at 9. Strategy updates, interdepartmental coordination. It's where the real decisions get made. She paused. I'm bringing you. Henry's stomach clenched. On my first day. I want them to understand you're not a publicity stunt. You're integral to how we move forward. Claire set down her coffee. But they're going to push back. Hard. Douglas Chen especially. He's the board chairman and he thinks this whole human values initiative is corporate suicide. Maybe he's right. He's not. But he's powerful, and he's going to make things difficult. Claire met his eyes. I need you to stand your ground. Not aggressively, you don't have the capital for that yet. But don't let them dismiss you. Your voice matters. Your perspective is exactly what this company needs. What if I say something stupid? Then you say something stupid, better than saying nothing. She stood paced. Henry, I'm asking you to walk into a room of people who've spent decades climbing corporate ladders, who measure success in market share and quarterly earnings, and tell them they're wrong about what matters. It's going to be brutal. So why am I doing it? Because someone has to, and you're the only person in this building who gave away his jacket in 19-degree weather. Claire's voice was fierce. They need to see that. They need to remember we're humans first, executives second. At 8:45, Linda appeared at the door with a leather portfolio. Conference room's ready. Most of the team's already there. Henry followed Claire down the corridor, his heart hammering against his ribs. Through glass walls, he could see them 7 executives around a mahogany table, all of them radiating authority and skepticism. An Asian man in his 60s sat at the head, silver hair, immaculate expression carved from granite. Douglas Chen. Claire walked in like she owned the room, which technically she did. Good morning. Before we start, I want to introduce Henry Miles. He's joining us as Human Values Advisor, a new position focused on ensuring our corporate strategy aligns with genuine human impact. The silence was deafening. Then Douglas spoke, his voice smooth and cutting. Claire, we discussed this yesterday on the phone. I thought we agreed to table this idea until next quarter. You suggested tabling it. I didn't agree. Claire gestured for Henry to sit. Henry starts today. He'll be attending executive meetings and providing input on major decisions. A woman in her 40s with severe bangs leaned forward. With respect, what qualifies someone with no corporate experience to advise on strategy? Life experience, Patricia. Claire's tone was steel wrapped in silk. Henry understands what our decisions cost real people. That perspective is invaluable. It's charity, Douglas said flatly. Well-intentioned perhaps, but this isn't a non-profit. We answer to shareholders. Henry felt the room's attention turn to him. Judging, dismissing, waiting for him to prove he didn't belong. Every instinct screamed at him to stay quiet, to make himself small, to survive by being invisible. Then he thought about Noah's drawing in his jacket pocket. About Sarah's last words. About the janitor whose name Claire never learned. You're right, Henry said, and his voice came out steadier than expected. I don't have corporate experience. I can't read a balance sheet or analyze market trends. But I've spent the last 18 months making impossible choices. Heat or food, phone bill or gas, dignity or survival, and every decision you make in this room eventually becomes one of those choices for someone. Patricia's expression sharpened. That's overly simplistic. Is it? Henry met her gaze. You're acquiring companies, restructuring divisions, optimizing efficiency. That's all language that means people lose jobs, families lose income, kids might not go to college. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying remember what it costs. We have severance packages, someone muttered. 3-month salary doesn't replace a career. It doesn't fix what happens to a family when a father can't provide, when a mother has to choose between health insurance and rent. Henry's hands were shaking, but he kept going. You want to know what qualifies me? I've lived the consequences of decisions like yours. I understand the human cost of corporate strategy in ways spreadsheets never show. The room was silent. Then Douglas leaned back, a slight smile on his lips. Passionate, I'll give you that. But passion doesn't drive profit. Strategy does. And strategy without humanity destroys lives. Henry paused. Including the people implementing it. When was the last time anyone in this room asked the janitor how he's doing? Learned the name of the woman who cleans your office at night? Actually saw the people who make this building function? Patricia blinked. Douglas's smile faded. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Claire's voice cut through the tension. Henry's question stands. Does anyone here know the cleaning staff by name? Silence. That's my point, Claire said. We've built a culture where people are invisible unless they're executives. Henry's job is to make us see them. All of them. Because a company that doesn't value its people will eventually collapse from the inside out. Douglas stood abruptly. This is idealistic nonsense. We have quarterly projections to hit acquisitions to close investors to satisfy. We don't have time for philosophical debates about cleaning staff. Then make time. Claire stood too, and the air crackled with confrontation. Because I'm the CEO, Douglas, and I'm telling you this is happening. You can be part of it or you can fight me. But fighting me means fighting the direction I'm taking this company. The power play was naked brutal. Douglas's jaw tightened. The board won't support this. The board hired me to lead. That's what I'm doing. They stared at each other across the mahogany table, and Henry realized he was watching a battle that had been brewing long before he gave away his jacket. This was about control, about vision, about what Infinity Group would become. Finally, Douglas sat. Fine. We'll see how long this experiment lasts. He opened a folder. Now can we discuss actual business? The meeting continued, but the dynamics had shifted. Henry sat quietly listening to discussions about market penetration and competitive positioning, trying to understand the language of corporate warfare. Occasionally, Claire would glance at him. A silent question. Are you okay? He'd nod, even though his heart was still racing. After an hour, Douglas closed his folder. One more thing. The Markham acquisition finalizes next month. We're looking at restructuring their operations, which means cutting approximately 300 positions. Standard consolidation. 300 people, Henry said before he could stop himself. Douglas looked at him. 300 redundant positions. It's necessary for integration efficiency. 300 families. Henry's voice was quiet but steady. 300 people who wake up every morning, kiss their kids goodbye, believe they're building something. You're about to tell them they're redundant. It's business. It's lives. Mr. Miles, Douglas said with exaggerated patience. This is how acquisitions work. We eliminate overlap, streamline operations, create value for shareholders, and destroy value for 300 families. Henry leaned forward. What if you didn't? Excuse me. What if you found a way to integrate Markham without mass layoffs? Retrain people instead of firing them. Relocate them to other divisions. Actually invest in human capital instead of treating people like disposable resources. Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. That's not economically viable. Says who? Henry challenged. Have you tried? Or do you just assume the cheapest option is the only option? Claire was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Henry has a point. We've never explored alternatives to layoffs during acquisitions. Maybe it's time we did. Douglas's face hardened. Claire, this is exactly the kind of bleeding heart thinking that destroys shareholder value. We can't run a billion-dollar company on feelings. I'm not suggesting we do. I'm suggesting we run it with humanity. There's a difference. Claire turned to the room. I want a task force. Henry, Patricia, and James from HR. You have 3 weeks to develop an alternative integration plan for Markham that preserves as many positions as possible while maintaining operational efficiency. That's impossible, Patricia said. Then prove it's impossible with data. But try first. Claire's tone left no room for argument. Meeting adjourned. The executives filed out, most of them avoiding eye contact with Henry. Patricia stopped at the door. You just made my life significantly harder, Mr. Miles. I'm sorry about that. But 300 people were about to lose their jobs. And they still might, because reality doesn't care about good intentions. She left without waiting for a response. Henry slumped in his chair, suddenly exhausted. Claire sat beside him. You did well. I made enemies on my first day. You made waves. That's different. She smiled. Patricia's tough, but she's fair. If you can show her a viable alternative, she'll consider it. Douglas is another story. He hates me. He hates change. You're just the physical manifestation of it. Claire stood gathering her materials. Come on, I want to show you your office. They walked to the other end of the 57th floor, past curious stares and whispered conversations. Claire stopped at a corner office with windows overlooking the city. This is yours. Henry stared. Corner office. Windows. A desk that looked like actual furniture instead of a metal frame. This is too much. It's strategic. You need credibility. A tiny interior office says you don't matter. This says you're important. Claire walked to the windows. Use the space. Make it yours. Bring in photos of Noah. Hang up his drawing. Let people see who you are. What am I supposed to do now? Learn. Observe. Linda will set up meetings with department heads. You'll tour facilities, meet staff, understand how Infinity actually operates. Then you'll help me change it. She paused at the door. And, Henry, what you said in there about the janitor, that mattered. People are thinking about it. After she left, Henry stood in his new office and tried to comprehend the 48 hours since he'd given away his jacket. 2 days ago, he'd been sleeping in a car. Now he had a corner office on the 57th floor. The whiplash was dizzying. His phone buzzed. Text from Noah. How's the first day? Did you burn the place down yet? Henry smiled and typed back. Almost. Still standing, though. Miss you. Miss you too. Aunt Margaret says I can visit this weekend if you want. I want. I'll send train money. We'll get pizza. Real pizza. Not like gas station pizza. The most real pizza in New York. They texted back and forth about nothing and everything, and Henry felt something in his chest loosen. This was why he was doing this. Not for the office or the salary. For the chance to be Noah's father again in ways that mattered. To have pizza on weekends and real conversations. To stop surviving and start living. Linda appeared with lunch. Claire said you'd forget to eat. And a schedule that made Henry's head spin. Meeting with HR at 2. Facility tour at 3:30. Coffee with the communications director at 4:15. Dinner with Claire and some Infinity Foundation board members at 7. Is it always like this? Henry asked. This is slow. Wait until you've been here a month. Linda smiled. You'll do fine. Just be yourself. That's what Claire hired. The afternoon blurred. HR was intimidating forms and policies and corporate structures he barely understood. The facility tour was eye-opening. He met warehouse staff, IT support, custodial workers, asked their names, shook their hands, saw their surprise that an executive cared. In the basement break room, he met Marcus, the 58-year-old. Linda had mentioned the one Thomas's place, had retrained in IT. Marcus was on break eating a sandwich and nearly dropped it when Henry sat down. I'm not in trouble, am I? Marcus asked nervously. Not at all. I'm new here, just trying to understand how everything works. You're the new guy Claire brought in. Heard about you. Marcus relaxed slightly. People are talking. Most think you won't last a week. What do you think? Marcus studied him. I think you look scared, but scared people either run or fight. You got that fighter look under the scared. They talked for 20 minutes. Marcus told him about losing his job, about the terror of being unemployed at 58, about Linda finding him through Thomas's place and giving him a chance. This company saved my life, Marcus said simply. Whatever Claire's trying to do with you, I hope it works. We need more people who give a damn. Henry carried that conversation through the rest of the day. Through the awkward coffee with the communications director who kept checking his watch. Through the dinner with Foundation board members who asked polite questions and made judgments behind professional smiles. By the time he got back to his apartment at 10 p.m., Henry was wrung out. His feet hurt. His head ached. He'd talked more than he had in 18 months combined. But he'd also seen something, in Marcus's gratitude, in the way the warehouse workers lit up when someone asked about their families, in the possibility that a company could be more than quarterly earnings. Henry lay in his actual bed, not a car seat, an actual bed, and stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. Claire, survived day 1. How are you feeling? Overwhelmed? Terrified? Hopeful? Perfect. That's exactly where you should be. Sleep well. Tomorrow we start changing things. Henry closed his eyes. Somewhere in the building, 300 Markham employees were doing their jobs unaware their livelihoods hung in the balance. Somewhere in the corporate machine decisions were being made that would ripple into living rooms and dinner tables and children's futures. And now, somehow, Henry was part of that machine. A gear that didn't quite fit, grinding against the other parts, trying to make the whole thing run more humanely. He thought about the jacket, about the moment of choice at the bus stop, about how one decision in 19-degree weather had led him here. Sarah used to say the universe sent signs if you paid attention. Henry had never believed it, but lying in his corporate apartment bed, thinking about janitors and drawings and second chances, he wondered if maybe she'd been right all along. His last thought before sleep was about the Markham workers. 300 people. 300 families. 3 weeks to find another way. 3 weeks to prove that humanity and business weren't enemies. That a company could make money and still have a soul. 3 weeks to show that the jacket had been more than kindness. It had been a revolution in olive green fabric. Henry slept better than he had in 18 months. He dreamed of Noah and Sarah and a future that looked almost possible. And when he woke at 6 a.m. to sunlight streaming through real windows, he felt something he barely recognized. Purpose. The second day started with an email from Patricia. No greeting, just a subject line. Markham Task Force. First meeting conference room, B 9 a.m., and an attachment labeled Preliminary Data. Henry opened it and immediately regretted it. Spreadsheets, dozens of them. Revenue projections, operational redundancies, departmental overlaps, cost-benefit analyses. The language of corporate efficiency that translated to human suffering if you knew how to read it. He showed up to conference room B at 8:55, coffee in hand, trying to look competent. Patricia was already there, along with a kind-faced man in his 40s, who introduced himself as James Mitchell from HR. Let's be clear, Patricia said without preamble. I think this is a waste of time, but Claire wants alternatives, so we'll explore alternatives. James, walk us through the Markham staffing structure. For the next hour, James explained the acquisition in detail. Markham Technologies was a mid-sized firm specializing in cloud infrastructure. Strong client base, good technology, but overlapping services with Infinity's existing tech division. Standard integration would consolidate both IT departments, eliminate redundant positions, streamline operations. 300 positions eliminated, James said. Most are mid-level engineers and support staff. Severance packages are standard 3-month salary benefits, continuation for 90 days job placement assistance. How many have families? Henry asked. James blinked. I don't have that data. Get it. How many are single parents? How many are sole income providers? How many have kids in college or sick family members or mortgages they can't afford to lose? Patricia's expression was unreadable. Why does that matter? Because 3-month severance means different things to different people. A single engineer with savings might be fine. A single mother with 2 kids and medical bills is ruined. Henry leaned forward. If we're going to cut people, at least understand what we're cutting. James made a note. I can get demographic data by tomorrow. While you're at it, Henry continued, find out what skills these people have beyond their current roles. Who's been with Markham long enough to understand the client relationships? Who has institutional knowledge that's hard to replace? Who's trainable for other divisions? Patricia's eyes narrowed. You want to relocate 300 people across Infinity. I want to explore it. Maybe only 50 are relocatable, maybe none. but we won't know unless we ask. Henry pulled out his phone, found his notes from yesterday's facility tour. Your warehouse division is hiring seasonal staff for the holiday surge. Your customer service center has high turnover. Your facilities management team mentioned being understaffed. What if we retrain Markham employees for those positions instead of firing them? That's not economically efficient, Patricia said. Retraining costs money. Hiring externally is cheaper. In the short term, sure, but long-term retention is better. People who've been saved from layoffs are loyal. They work harder. They become evangelists for the company. Henry remembered Marcus. They tell people Infinity cares. That's worth something. It's worth good PR, Patricia admitted. But it's still expensive. Then let's calculate the cost. Compare it to the cost of bad press from mass layoffs, potential wrongful termination suits, damage to company morale, loss of institutional knowledge. Henry was guessing now, but his engineering training kicked in. Do a real cost-benefit analysis that includes human factors, not just immediate expense reduction. James was writing fast. I can model that. It'll take time. We have 3 weeks, Patricia said. Let's use them. James, get me the demographic data and retraining cost projections by Friday. I'll work on the operational integration timeline. Henry, She paused, considering. You talk to the Markham employees. Find out what they actually want, what their skills are, what they're afraid of. Bring me real data, not feelings. It was a test. Henry recognized it immediately. She was sending him into the field, expecting him to come back with nothing useful, proving his approach was naive. I'll have a report by Monday, Henry said. After the meeting, he found Linda. I need to visit Markham Technologies, today if possible. Can you arrange it? Linda made it happen because Linda made everything happen. By 3 p.m., Henry was in a town car heading to New Jersey, where Markham's main office occupied 3 floors of a suburban office park. The receptionist looked confused when Henry introduced himself. I'm sorry I don't have you on the calendar. Last-minute addition. I'm from Infinity Group. Just here to talk to people, understand the operation. She made a phone call. Within minutes, a nervous-looking manager appeared. Mr. Miles, I'm David Reeves, Operations Director. We weren't expecting anyone from Infinity until next month. This isn't official due diligence. I'm not here to evaluate, just to listen. Henry offered his most disarming smile. Could I maybe talk to some of your staff? Informally, I want to understand what Markham does, who works here, what makes this place special. David relaxed fractionally. I suppose that's fine. What would you like to see? Everything. Start with wherever people take their lunch breaks. The break room was cramped but cheerful, decorated with family photos and kids' artwork. A dozen people sat at tables eating sandwiches, talking quietly. They fell silent when Henry walked in. Hi, Henry said. I'm Henry Miles from Infinity. I'm not here to scare anyone. I just want to talk. Mind if I sit? A woman in her 30s with purple-streaked hair gestured to an empty chair. You're part of the acquisition team. Not exactly. I'm in a weird new position called Human Values Advisor. Basically, I'm supposed to make sure Infinity doesn't forget about actual humans when making decisions. That's a corporate job, someone asked skeptically. As of 3 days ago, yeah. Henry sat down. Look, I know you've all heard rumors about layoffs, about consolidation. I can't promise anything, but I'm trying to find alternatives. To do that, I need to understand who you are, what you do, what matters to you. Silence. Then the purple-haired woman spoke. I'm Rachel. I've been here 6 years. I'm a network engineer. I'm also a single mom with a 12-year-old who has diabetes. My insurance through Markham covers her continuous glucose monitor. If I lose this job, I lose that coverage. Generic insurance won't pay for the good technology. My daughter suffers. Henry's throat tightened. What other skills do you have? Beyond network engineering. I'm good with people. Used to do customer service before I got my engineering degree. I can explain technical stuff to non-technical clients. I've run training sessions for new hires. Henry made notes. Anyone else want to share? They did. One by one, the stories emerged. Michael, whose wife was in treatment for breast cancer. Amanda, who'd just bought her first house. Jordan, who was paying off student loans from his master's degree. Each person, a universe of responsibilities and hopes and fears. Henry spent 4 hours at Markham. Talked to engineers, administrative staff managers, even the janitorial crew. He collected names, stories, skills, dreams. By the time he left, his notebook was full, and his heart was heavy. On the drive back to Manhattan, he reviewed his notes. Rachel's daughter's diabetes, Michael's wife's chemotherapy, Amanda's mortgage, Jordan's student debt. 300 people, each one carrying burdens that 3 months' severance wouldn't fix. But he'd also found something else. Transferable skills. Customer service experience. Institutional knowledge about Markham's client relationships. Loyalty to a company that had treated them well. Assets that Infinity would lose if they just fired everyone. By the time Henry reached his apartment, he had the skeleton of a plan. Not perfect, maybe not even viable, but a plan that treated people like humans instead of line items. He worked until 2 a.m. building a presentation. Demographics, skills inventory, retraining proposals, cost comparisons that included human factors, morale, loyalty, reputation, long-term retention. He used everything he'd learned, every conversation he'd had. When he finally closed his laptop exhausted, Henry felt something he hadn't felt since before Sarah got sick, like he was building something that mattered. Friday morning, Henry stood in front of the task force with his presentation loaded and his hands shaking. Patricia sat with her arms crossed, expression skeptical. James had his laptop open, ready to take notes. Claire had asked to sit in, which made Henry simultaneously grateful and more nervous. 300 people. Henry began, and his voice came out stronger than he felt. That's what the original integration plan eliminates. But I spent yesterday at Markham, and I want to tell you about 3 of them. He clicked to the first slide. A photo he'd taken with permission, Rachel smiling despite everything at her desk, surrounded by photos of her daughter. Rachel Martinez, 6 years at Markham. Network engineer. Single mother. Her daughter has type 1 diabetes requiring a continuous glucose monitor that costs $8,000 a year. Her current insurance covers it. Standard marketplace insurance won't. If we lay off Rachel, her daughter loses access to life-saving technology. Henry paused. But Rachel also has customer service experience and training skills. She could transition to our client relations division or technical training department. We'd keep her institutional knowledge about Markham's client relationships and save a child's life. Patricia's expression didn't change, but she leaned forward slightly. Henry clicked to the next slide. Michael Torres, 12 years at Markham. His wife is in month 3 of breast cancer treatment. Their insurance has already covered $200,000 in medical costs. If we lay him off, she loses her oncologist and has to start over with new doctors mid-treatment. He met Patricia's eyes. Michael also manages Markham's largest accounts. Those clients trust him personally. If we fire him, we risk losing contracts worth millions. But if we keep him and train him for our enterprise sales division, we preserve those relationships and save a woman's life. James was typing fast now. Claire's face was unreadable. Amanda Chen, first-generation college graduate, bought her first house 6 months ago. If she loses this job, she loses the house she worked 15 years to afford. Henry clicked to a slide showing Amanda's skills profile. But Amanda also has project management certification and has trained every new hire at Markham for the past 3 years. She's built their entire onboarding system. We could use her expertise in our HR development program. He closed the laptop and faced them directly. I have 297 more stories like this. People with mortgages, medical bills, kids in college, elderly parents they support. The original plan treats them all as redundant positions. I'm suggesting we treat them as human capital worth preserving. That's emotionally compelling, Patricia said carefully. But you still haven't addressed the economic reality. Keeping 300 people costs money. Actually, I have. Henry reopened the laptop, clicked through to his cost analysis. James helped me run the numbers. Standard severance for 300 people costs Infinity approximately $6 million. That's 3 months' salary plus benefits continuation. Then factor in recruitment costs for new hires, approximately $15,000 per position to replace institutional knowledge. That's another $4.5 million. We're at $10.5 million before we even consider training new staff, lost productivity during transitions, or potential client attrition. Patricia was staring at the screen now. My proposal costs $8.2 million over 2 years. That includes retraining programs, temporary position adjustments, and salary continuity. But it also preserves client relationships worth approximately $40 million annually, maintains institutional knowledge, and prevents the morale damage of mass layoffs. Henry pulled up the final comparison slide. We save $2.3 million immediately and protect long-term revenue. Plus, we don't destroy 300 families. The silence stretched. Then James spoke quietly. He's right about the client relationships. I've been reviewing Markham's contracts. 60% have personal relationship clauses. If key personnel leave, clients can renegotiate terms or terminate. We'd lose more than the severance costs. Patricia looked at Claire. Did you know about this? Not until this moment. This is all Henry. And you actually visited Markham? Patricia asked Henry. Talked to these people. All day yesterday. Then I worked until 2 a.m. building the analysis. Henry's exhaustion was catching up with him. Look, maybe I'm naive. Maybe this is too idealistic. But the numbers work. And 300 families stay intact. That's not charity. That's smart business. Patricia closed her laptop slowly. I need to review this with my team, but if your numbers hold, and I'll be checking every calculation, this might actually be viable. She stood. You surprised me, Mr. Miles. I didn't expect competence. I was a structural engineer for 10 years before I was homeless. I know how to build things, including spreadsheets. Something shifted in Patricia's expression. Respect, maybe. I'll have feedback by Monday. If this works, we present to Douglas and the board next week. After they left, Claire stayed behind. She was smiling in a way Henry hadn't seen before, proud, almost maternal. You did it, she said. Did what Patricia still has to approve it. You made them see people instead of numbers. You built a bridge between humanity and profit. That's exactly what I hired you for. Claire walked to the window. But you should know Douglas is already pushing back. He called me this morning, said your presentation at Wednesday's meeting was inappropriate. That you're undermining corporate discipline. Henry's stomach sank. Am I making things worse for you? You're making things different. That's always uncomfortable. She turned back. He's calling an emergency board session for next Thursday. He's going to try to kill this whole initiative before it gains momentum. What do I do? Exactly what you've been doing. Build your case. Show results. Make it impossible for them to deny that humanity and profit aren't enemies. Claire's expression hardened with determination. And prepare for a fight, because Douglas doesn't lose gracefully. The weekend brought Noah to the city, and Henry felt his world click back into alignment. They met at Penn Station Saturday morning, and Noah crashed into him with a hug that nearly knocked them both over. You look different, Noah said, pulling back to study his father. Like, official. I'm wearing pants without holes. That's probably it. They spent the day being tourists in their own city. Pizza in Greenwich Village, walking the High Line, talking about everything and nothing. Noah told him about school, about the basketball team, about a girl named Emma who maybe smiled at him in chemistry class. Normal things, miraculous things, In Henry's apartment, still surreal to have an apartment, Noah sprawled on the couch and looked around. "This is nice, Dad. Like really nice." "It's temporary. Corporate housing until I find something permanent." "Still, it's not the car." Noah's voice cracked slightly. "I was worried about you. Every night." Henry sat beside him. "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. Just—" Noah struggled for words. "Just don't go back there, okay? Whatever happens with this job, don't go back to sleeping in parking lots. Call me. Call Aunt Margaret. Don't disappear into that again." "I won't. I promise." They ordered Chinese food and watched movies and fell asleep on the couch like they used to when Noah was little. And when Henry woke up Sunday morning to find his son making coffee badly, but trying, he felt something fundamental shift. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. He was being a father again. Sunday afternoon, they visited Thomas's place. Claire had given Henry the access code, told him to take Noah to show him what the job was really about. The community center was quiet on weekends, but a few families were there. Kids doing homework in the reading corner, a mother talking quietly with a counselor, an older man using the computer station to apply for jobs. "This is what she built," Henry explained to Noah. "After someone gave her a coat when she was 7, she never forgot. This is her way of giving coats to other people." Noah read the wall of photos, studied each face, stopped at Rachel's picture. She'd graduated from the program 3 years ago, Henry learned later. These are real people. That's the point. Real people with real problems getting real help. Henry put his hand on Noah's shoulder. "That's what I'm trying to make bigger, so more families don't fall through the cracks. Like we did. Like we did." Noah turned to him, eyes bright. "Mom would be so proud of you right now." The words hit Henry like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on surviving on the day-to-day struggle that he'd stopped thinking about whether Sarah would be proud. Stopped thinking about anything beyond the next meal, the next night, the next impossible choice. "You think so?" His voice cracked. "I know so. You gave away your jacket, Dad. In the freezing cold. Because that's who you are. That's who she married. That's who I want to be." Noah hugged him tight. "You didn't screw up your life. You got knocked down by something that would have destroyed most people. But you're getting back up. That's not failure. That's courage." Henry held his son and cried. Not sad tears, healing ones. The kind that wash away shame and replace it with something stronger. Monday morning, Patricia's email arrived at 6:47 a.m. "Your numbers check out. Some adjustments needed, but the framework is solid. We present to the executive team Wednesday. Come prepared to defend every line item. Douglas will try to destroy this." P. Henry spent Tuesday in a conference room with Patricia and James refining the presentation. Patricia was relentless, challenging every assumption, stress testing every calculation, playing devil's advocate with surgical precision. "Douglas will say, retraining is too expensive," she said. "What's your counter? Recruitment and onboarding of new employees costs more, and we lose client relationships in the process. Retraining preserves both human and social capital." He'll say 300 people can't be relocated across divisions. "We're not relocating all 300. Phase 1 targets 75 people with immediately transferable skills. Phase 2 develops retraining programs for another 100. The remaining 125 still face severance, but we offer extended support 6 months instead of 3 job placement assistance education subsidies." He'll say you're being soft. And I'll say I'm being strategic. Companies with strong human capital retention have better long-term performance. There's data. McKinsey did a study in 2019. Patricia almost smiled. "You've been doing homework." "I spent Sunday night reading corporate strategy papers while my son slept. Turns out some of this stuff actually makes sense." James looked up from his laptop. "I have final numbers. Total cost over 3 years, $9 million. Projected savings from retained client relationships and reduced turnover, $14 million. Net benefit, $5 million. not counting intangible gains in morale and reputation. Patricia closed her eyes, calculating. That's a strong business case. Douglas will still hate it, but he can't argue with the math. Unless he argues we should just maximize short-term profit and ignore long-term consequences, Henry said, which is exactly what he'll argue. Patricia stood. Get some sleep tonight. Wednesday's going to be brutal. Wednesday morning felt like walking toward a firing squad. Henry dressed in his best suit, the one Linda had insisted was armor not clothes, and arrived at Infinity by 7. The executive meeting started at 9, but Claire wanted to prep. In her office, she paced like a caged tiger. Douglas spent yesterday lobbying board members. He's positioning this as a referendum on my leadership. If we lose today, he'll use it to argue I'm unfit to run the company. So no pressure. Mountains of pressure. But we have the numbers. We have the moral argument. We have a chance. She stopped pacing, faced him. Henry, in that room, Douglas is going to attack you personally. Your background, your qualifications, your judgment. He's going to try to make you lose your temper or break down. Don't let him. What if I can't help it? Then remember why you're doing this. 300 families, Rachel's daughter, Michael's wife, the janitor who gave me his coat. Claire's voice was fierce. You're fighting for them. Let that be stronger than whatever Douglas throws at you. At 9 a.m. they walked into the conference room together. The entire executive team was there, plus 2 board members Henry didn't recognize. Douglas sat at the head of the table, expression carved from ice. Before we begin, Douglas said, I want to state for the record that I believe this entire exercise is a waste of company resources. However, Claire has insisted we hear the alternative proposal. So, let's hear it. Patricia stood and delivered the presentation with clinical precision. The demographics, the cost analysis, the client relationship risks, the proposed retraining programs. She made it sound inevitable, logical, unassailable. When she finished, Douglas was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked directly at Henry. Mr. Miles, this is your brainchild. Explain to me why we should risk millions in restructuring costs to save people who are frankly redundant. Henry stood and his hands were steady. Because they're not redundant, they're underutilized. There's a difference. Semantic games. Economic reality. You're preparing to spend $10 million to fire people and hire replacements who'll need 6 months to reach the productivity levels we already have. I'm proposing we spend less money to redeploy people who already understand our business and have client relationships worth $40 million annually. Henry clicked to the comparison slide. One option destroys value, the other preserves it. That's not semantics. That's strategy. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s with intelligent eyes, leaned forward. You mentioned client relationships. Can you quantify that risk? Yes. James? James pulled up a new slide. 63% of Markham's contracts include key person clauses. If specific employees leave, clients can renegotiate terms or exit. We've identified 42 contracts worth a combined $38 million annually that are at risk if we proceed with mass layoffs. The cost of losing even 20% of those contracts exceeds the entire cost of the retention program. The board member nodded slowly. That's significant. Douglas's jaw tightened. We can renegotiate those contracts. In theory, Patricia interjected. In practice, clients choose providers based on relationships. If we fire the people they trust, they leave. I've seen it happen. So we're being held hostage by 300 employees. Douglas's voice was sharp. We're being offered an opportunity, Henry corrected, to demonstrate that Infinity values people, to build loyalty that becomes competitive advantage, to prove we're not just another corporation that treats humans as disposable. That's naive corporate social responsibility nonsense. It's brand differentiation, Henry clicked to another slide: social media analysis, prepared by the communications team overnight. Companies known for humane treatment during acquisitions see a 7% increase in customer satisfaction and a 12% improvement in employee retention. Those numbers translate to millions in reduced recruitment costs and increased customer lifetime value. Douglas stood abruptly. Enough. This is exactly the kind of bleeding heart thinking that destroys shareholder value. We're not a charity. We're a business. Our responsibility is to maximize profit, not play social worker. Our responsibility, Claire said quietly, is to build a sustainable company. And sustainability requires more than quarterly earnings. It requires people who believe in what we're building. Belief doesn't pay dividends. Actually, it does. The board member who'd asked about client relationships spoke again. I've been researching this. Companies with strong human capital investment outperform their peers over 10-year periods. The data's clear. Maybe it's time Infinity caught up. Douglas turned to her, his expression dangerous. Jennifer, you're seriously supporting this. I'm supporting an analysis that makes business sense. If Mr. Miles's numbers hold, and I'll be auditing them personally, this is a viable strategy. Jennifer looked at Henry. You have 3 weeks until the Markham integration. Prove your plan works. Show me results. Then we'll talk about expansion. It wasn't a full victory, but it wasn't defeat either. It was a chance. Douglas left the meeting without another word, his displeasure radiating like heat. The other executives filed out more slowly, some nodding at Henry, others avoiding his gaze entirely. Claire stayed behind with Henry and Patricia. That went better than expected. He's going to make our lives hell, Patricia said. But Jennifer's support helps. She's the most influential board member after Douglas. What happens now? Henry asked. Now you implement. Patricia turned to him. You have 3 weeks to show this works. Find positions for 75 Markham employees across Infinity divisions. Set up the retraining programs. Make this happen, or Douglas will use the failure to bury everything Claire's trying to build. No pressure, Henry muttered. Immense pressure. Get used to it. Patricia gathered her materials. I'm assigning you a team, 3 junior analysts from strategy. Use them. And Henry, don't screw this up. A lot of people are counting on you now. After she left, Claire sagged into a chair. Douglas called me into his office yesterday. Told me I was jeopardizing my position, that the board was losing confidence. Is that true? Partly. Some board members think I'm too idealistic, that I'm letting sentiment cloud judgment. She looked at Henry. If this fails, I might lose my job. The weight of that settled over Henry, like a physical thing. Claire, I can't if I'm the reason you're not the reason for anything. I chose this. I chose to build something that matters. She stood, and her determination was back. But we need wins. Fast. Can you make this happen? Henry thought about Rachel and Michael and Amanda. About 300 people, whose lives hung in the balance. About Noah watching to see if his father could build something good from the wreckage. I'll make it happen, he said. The next 3 weeks were controlled chaos. Henry worked 16-hour days moving through Infinity's divisions like a man possessed. He met with every department head, mapped out potential positions, matched Markham employees to opportunities. Rachel went to client relations after a week of training. Her first day, she resolved a client issue that had been festering for months, using her technical knowledge to explain complex problems in simple terms. The client sent a thank you note directly to Claire. Michael transitioned to enterprise sales. His Markham clients followed him, and he closed 2 new contracts in his first 10 days. Amanda joined HR development, where she immediately started restructuring the onboarding program using systems she'd built at Markham. One by one, Henry found places for people. Not charity positions. Real jobs where their skills mattered. By week 2, he'd placed 43 people. By week 3, 68. But 7 couldn't be placed. Their skills were too specialized, or they didn't want to relocate, or the timing didn't work. Henry met with each one, personally explained the extended severance package, helped them understand their options. One of them was a man named Robert, who'd been at Markham for 20 years. "I don't blame you," Robert said when Henry delivered the news. "You tried. That's more than most companies do. The 6-month severance gives me time to find something good. My family will be okay." Henry carried those conversations like weights. Every person he couldn't save felt like failure. On Thursday of week 3, Jennifer from the board arrived for her audit. She spent 2 days reviewing every placement, every cost projection, every outcome metric. Henry barely slept, convinced she'd find fatal flaws. Friday afternoon, she called him to her temporary office, a converted conference room on the 54th floor. "Sit down, Mr. Miles." Henry sat, his heart hammering. "I've reviewed everything, talked to the people you placed, run the numbers 6 different ways." Jennifer's expression was unreadable. "This shouldn't work. It's too idealistic, too complicated, too human." Henry's stomach dropped. "But it does work." Jennifer's face softened into something like wonder. "Retention is perfect so far. Productivity is actually up in the divisions that received Markham employees. Client satisfaction has improved. You've saved the company approximately $4 million compared to the original plan, and you've preserved $38 million in client relationships." She paused. "How did you do this?" "I just talked to people, found out what they needed, matched skills to opportunities, treated them like humans instead of problems." "That's too simple." "Maybe simple is what we forgot." Henry leaned forward. "Every person I placed came in grateful, motivated, loyal. They work harder because they know someone fought for them. That's worth more than any salary." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "I'm recommending to the board that we expand this program. Make human values a permanent division. Give you budget to build a team." Henry couldn't breathe. "Really? Really? Claire was right about you. You're changing how this company thinks." Jennifer stood. "But Henry, understand what you're starting. This threatens people like Douglas, who believe profit is the only metric that matters. You've made powerful enemies. They'll keep trying to destroy this." "I know. And you're still willing to fight." Henry thought about the jacket, about Noah's drawing, about Rachel's daughter and Michael's wife, and all the people who'd been saved because one woman remembered a janitor's kindness. "I'm willing to fight," he said. That night, Claire called him to her office. She had champagne, the expensive kind, and tears in her eyes. Jennifer's recommendation passed. The board approved human values as a permanent division. You have a budget. You have authority. You have a team. She poured 2 glasses. "Henry, you did it. You actually did it." They toasted, and Henry felt the surreal weight of victory. 6 weeks ago, he'd been sleeping in a car. Now he was running a corporate division dedicated to keeping companies human. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we scale it. Every Infinity acquisition goes through human values review. Every major restructuring has to consider human impact. You're building the conscience of a $7 billion company." Claire smiled. "No pressure." Henry laughed, actually laughed. "Always with the pressure." "That's what makes it matter." She clinked her glass against his. "To small acts of kindness. And the revolutions they start." "To janitors in jackets," Henry added. "And the people who remember." They drank to futures that seemed impossible 6 weeks ago. To second chances and redemption. To the radical idea that corporations could have souls. And in the corner of Claire's office, hanging in a simple frame, was Noah's crayon drawing. "Dad and Me." A reminder that everything big starts small. That love leaves marks. That kindness, even in 19-degree weather, can change the world. Henry's phone buzzed. Text from Noah. "Saw the news about your program on the company blog. You're famous, Dad. I'm so proud of you." Henry showed Claire. She read it and smiled. "He should be proud. You're remarkable. I just gave someone my jacket. You gave someone hope. That's harder. That's braver. Claire looked out at the city lights. Want to know something? I'm rewriting my whole approach to business because of you. Not just at Infinity. I'm talking to other CEOs, sharing what we're learning, maybe starting a movement. Of what? Humanity in corporate America. Revolutionary concept, right? She turned back to him. Douglas will hate it. The old guard will fight us. But if we can prove it works here, other companies will follow. We could change how business operates. The scale of it was dizzying. One jacket. One bus stop. One moment of choosing kindness over comfort. And now, it was rippling outward, touching hundreds of lives, maybe thousands. Sarah would love this, Henry said softly. Tell me about her. So he did. About Sarah's laugh and her stubbornness, and her belief that people were fundamentally good. About how she'd volunteered at shelters and donated to causes and always saw the best in everyone. About how her illness had been cruel and fast, but she'd faced it with grace that humbled him. She sounds extraordinary, Claire said. She was. I just wish she could see what came from trying to honor her memory, from trying to be the person she believed I was. Maybe she does see. Claire wasn't religious, but something in her voice suggested she wanted to believe anyway. Maybe that's what heaven is, watching the people we loved keep loving forward. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city that never sleeps, thinking about jackets and janitors, and the ways kindness echoes through time. Henry's phone buzzed again. This time, it was Rachel. Thank you for giving me a chance. My daughter's CGM came in today. She's going to be okay. You saved her life. He showed that message to Claire, too. She read it, and her eyes filled. That's what we're building, she said. That, right there. A company that saves lives just by seeing people. One person at a time. That's how you change the world. Claire raised her glass one more time. To seeing people, to saving lives, to giving away jackets even when it costs everything. To second chances, Henry added, and the courage to take them. They drank to that, to hope and healing and the radical notion that business could be more than profit. And somewhere in New Jersey, Rachel tucked her daughter into bed with a functioning CGM on her arm. Somewhere upstate, Noah fell asleep proud of his father. Somewhere in memory, Sarah smiled. The jacket had traveled far from that bus stop, further than Henry could have imagined. But its journey was just beginning. Because once you start seeing people, you can't stop. Once you choose kindness, it becomes a habit. Once you build something that matters, it takes on a life of its own. Henry left Claire's office at midnight, walked through the empty 57th floor, and stopped at the window. Manhattan sparkled below, full of people with their own struggles and hopes and moments of choice. Tomorrow, he'd start building the team. Next week, he'd implement the expanded program. Next month, who knew what was possible? But tonight, he was just Henry. A father. A widower. A man who'd given away his jacket and received a future in return. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to Noah. I love you. I'm coming home. For real this time. We're going to be okay. The response was immediate. I never doubted you, Dad. Not even once. Henry smiled and headed home. To his apartment. His actual home. His second chance at the life he'd thought was gone forever. And hanging on his coat rack, olive green and worn but clean, was the jacket that started everything. The jacket that saved him by forcing him to save someone else. He touched it gently, remembering. Then he grabbed his new winter coat, a gift from Claire, warm and professional, and headed out into the February night. The old jacket could rest now. It had done its work. Changed 2 lives at a bus stop. Started a revolution in corporate kindness. Proved that one moment of human decency could ripple forward through time and space and possibility. Henry walked through Manhattan with his head up and his heart full. Somewhere in the city, 300 Markham employees were sleeping soundly, their futures secure. Somewhere in a boardroom, other CEOs were starting to wonder if humanity and profit could coexist. And somewhere in the universe, if Sarah could see she was smiling. Because her husband had kept his promise. He'd taken care of Noah. He'd kept living. He'd turned grief into purpose and survival into meaning. All because of a jacket. And a bus stop. And the choice to be kind when kindness cost everything. The best choices always do. 3 months after the Markham integration, Henry stood in Thomas's place, watching Claire hang the jacket in a custom glass frame. Not his jacket anymore. Their jacket. The symbol of everything that had changed. "Are you sure about this?" Henry asked. "It's just an old military surplus jacket." "It's the most important artifact this company owns." Claire adjusted the frame carefully. Below it, a bronze plaque read, "One act of kindness can change everything." February 2025. People need to see what started this. Need to remember that all of this began with someone choosing to be kind when it cost him everything. The community center had grown. What used to be a single converted office now occupied an entire floor. 3 full-time counselors. A job training center. A childcare facility. An emergency fund that had helped 70 families in the past month alone. The waiting list was 3 pages long. Henry's team had grown too. 5 analysts working under him plus Patricia on loan from Strategy 3 days a week. She'd become an unlikely ally, her analytical precision giving teeth to Henry's humanitarian instincts. Together, they'd reviewed 4 acquisitions, prevented 2 mass layoffs, and restructured Infinity's entire approach to corporate integration. The phone calls had started coming from other companies. CEOs curious about the Infinity model. Journalists wanting interviews. Business schools requesting case studies. What had begun at a bus stop was becoming something bigger than either of them had imagined. But success brought scrutiny. And Douglas Chen was watching, waiting, looking for any crack in the foundation. The crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in May. Henry was in his office reviewing applications for the expanded scholarship program, another Claire initiative funded by Infinity, named after the janitor she never forgot, when Linda burst in without knocking. "Conference room, now." Douglas called an emergency board meeting. Henry's stomach dropped. What happened? I don't know. But Claire looked scared. The boardroom was packed. All 12 board members, the full executive team, even legal counsel. Douglas stood at the head of the table with a laptop and an expression that promised blood. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Douglas began. "I've called this meeting because I've uncovered something that demands immediate attention. Something that threatens the integrity of everything we've built." Claire sat perfectly still, but Henry saw her hands clenched beneath the table. 3 months ago, we approved the Human Values Division over my objections. I was told it would save money, preserve client relationships, and improve company culture. Douglas clicked to a presentation slide. "I've been conducting my own analysis, and I've found significant discrepancies." The slide showed a cost breakdown, numbers in red, expenses that looked damning. The Human Values Division has cost Infinity $12 million in 3 months. That's $4 million per month. At this rate, we're looking at $48 million annually. Douglas's voice was sharp with vindication. This is exactly the kind of unchecked idealism that destroys shareholder value. Jennifer, the board member who'd supported Henry, leaned forward. "Douglas, the original projection was $9 million over 3 years. These numbers don't align." "Because the original projections were fiction." Douglas clicked to another slide. "Mr. Miles promised we'd save money by preserving client relationships and reducing turnover. But he failed to account for the actual costs of his programs. The expanded Thomas's Place facility. The scholarship fund. The emergency assistance program. The retraining initiatives. All pulling from corporate budgets with no oversight." Henry felt the room's attention shift to him. Accusatory. Betrayed. "Those programs were approved," Claire said, her voice tight. "Every expense went through proper channels. They were approved based on false projections, based on Mr. Miles representing himself as a qualified analyst when he's actually..." Douglas paused for effect. A homeless man you pulled off the street and dressed in a suit. The words landed like grenades. Henry saw executives exchange glances, saw doubt creep into faces that had been supportive. "That's not relevant," Claire said, but her voice wavered. "It's entirely relevant. We entrusted major corporate decisions to someone with no qualifications, no experience, and no accountability. Someone who's been living in our corporate housing using our resources, building a pet project that's hemorrhaging money." Douglas turned to Henry. "Mr. Miles, can you explain these cost overruns?" Henry stood, his legs unsteady. He'd prepared for attacks on his ideas, his background, his methods. He hadn't prepared for numbers that made him look incompetent or fraudulent. "The costs are higher than initially projected," he admitted. "But the benefits are too. Client retention is up 17%. Employee satisfaction has increased by 23%. Recruitment costs are down 40% because people want to work here now. Those are soft metrics. Where's the hard revenue impact?" Revenue is up 9% year-over-year in divisions that integrated human values protocols. Productivity is measurably higher. Turnover is measurably lower. The ROI exists, it just takes longer to materialize than 1/4. Douglas smiled, and it was predatory. "So you're asking shareholders to accept short-term losses for hypothetical long-term gains, based on your expertise in what was your last job again? Oh right, sleeping in a car." The room erupted. Some executives defending Douglas, others protesting the personal attack. Jennifer calling for order. Claire on her feet, face flushed with anger. Henry standing alone in the center of the storm, feeling everything he'd built crumbling around him. "Enough!" Jennifer's voice cut through the chaos. "Douglas' personal attacks are inappropriate. But your concerns about costs are valid. We need an independent audit of the Human Values Division. Comprehensive financial review. If the numbers don't support continuation, we revisit the program." "And if they do support it," Claire challenged, "then Douglas backs off and lets you run the company you were hired to run." Jennifer looked between them. "We vote. All in favor of an independent audit with results due in 30 days. 11 hands went up. Only Douglas abstained. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. The boardroom emptied quickly. People avoiding eye contact with Henry. He stood frozen, watching his credibility evaporate in real time. Claire approached, her expression anguished. "Henry, I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better." "The numbers are real, aren't they? We are spending more than projected." "Because we're doing more than projected. The scholarship program wasn't in the original budget. Neither was expanding Thomas's place. But those are good things. They matter. Not if they bankrupt the company. They won't. But Douglas is going to use this to destroy everything." Claire's phone was buzzing constantly. "I have to do damage control. Call board members, reassure investors. Can you?" "I'll pull together the financial documentation. Give the auditors everything they need." They separated, both knowing the next 30 days would determine if the revolution survived or if kindness was just another corporate experiment that failed. Henry spent the evening in his office, surrounded by spreadsheets and reports, trying to find the narrative in the numbers. The expenses were real. 12 million in 3 months. But so were the benefits. Reduced turnover. Saving millions in recruitment. Client retention worth tens of millions annually. Employee productivity gains that rippled through every division. The question was whether anyone would see past the sticker shock to the actual value. His phone rang. Noah. "Dad, I saw something on LinkedIn about your program. Are you in trouble?" Henry closed his eyes. "It's complicated. Some people think we're spending too much money trying to help people. That's stupid. You're literally saving the company money by not firing everyone." "I know, but accounting doesn't always show that clearly." Henry rubbed his face. "I might lose this job, Noah, if the audit goes badly. Then we'll figure it out. Together." Noah's voice was fierce with loyalty. You didn't give up when we lost the house, when Mom died, when everything fell apart. Don't give up now because some rich guy doesn't understand what you're building." After they hung up, Henry sat in the dark thinking about giving up versus fighting forward, about Sarah and her stubborn optimism, about the jacket and the choice he'd made without thinking. He'd given it away because that's what decent people do. Because someone was cold and he could help. The consequences, the job, the program, the revolution, those had come later. But the choice itself had been simple. Maybe that was the answer. Stop trying to justify kindness with spreadsheets. Just show what it built. Henry opened his laptop and started writing. Not a financial report. A story. 300 faces. Rachel's daughter getting her CGM. Michael's wife finishing chemo successfully. Amanda buying her house. Robert finding a better job than Markham with the extended severance support. 23 single parents getting childcare assistance. 47 families receiving emergency funds that prevented evictions. Numbers told one story. Lives told another. And maybe the second story mattered more. The audit team arrived the following Monday. 3 people from a prestigious consulting firm, all business suits and skeptical expressions. They set up in a conference room and started requesting files. Henry gave them everything. Every expense report, every program document, every outcome metric. Then he gave them something else: access to the people the programs had helped. If you want to understand the costs, Henry said, you should understand the impact. I've arranged interviews. They're voluntary. But I think you should hear from the people whose lives changed. The lead auditor, a woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. So is what we're doing here. Over the next 2 weeks, the auditors did their job with surgical precision. They reviewed every line item questioned, every expense tracked, every dollar. But they also talked to Rachel about her daughter, to Michael about his wife, to the 75 Markham employees who kept their jobs, and the 125 who got extended support. Henry watched Dr. Kim's expression change over those weeks, from skeptical to curious, to something that looked almost like wonder. On day 27, she requested a meeting with Claire and Henry together. "I've completed the preliminary findings," Dr. Kim said, setting a bound report on the table. "The financial analysis is complex." "Give it to us straight," Claire said. "Are we hemorrhaging money on feel-good programs that don't work?" "No. You're investing in human capital infrastructure that's generating measurable returns. But those returns don't show up where traditional accounting looks for them." Dr. Kim opened the report. Direct costs $12 million over 3 months, as Douglas stated, but indirect savings $18 million in the same period. Reduced recruitment, lower turnover, higher productivity, preserved client relationships, decreased healthcare costs from stress-related issues. Henry's breath caught. "We're net positive. By $6 million in 3 months. Projected annual benefit $24 million conservatively." Dr. Kim looked between them. "But here's what's interesting. The benefits are accelerating. As word spreads that Infinity actually cares about people, you're attracting better talent. Retention is increasing beyond initial projections. Clients are actively choosing Infinity over competitors because of reputation." "Why didn't our internal accounting catch this?" Claire asked. "Because you're measuring wrong. Traditional corporate accounting tracks direct expenses in one column and direct revenue in another. Indirect benefits like retention and reputation get lost. They're real, they're quantifiable, but they're not in the quarterly reports that boards obsess over." Dr. Kim smiled slightly. "You need a new accounting framework, one that captures human capital value." "Can you build that framework?" Henry asked. "I can, but it'll require changing how Infinity thinks about measurement, how the board evaluates success, how Wall Street analysts assess your performance." She paused. "That's a harder fight than proving the numbers work." Claire and Henry exchanged glances. They'd won the battle. Now came the war. The final audit presentation was scheduled for June 15th in the main boardroom with all 12 board members present. Douglas arrived early, confident in his vindication. Jennifer sat in the center, expression neutral. The other board members murmured among themselves, waiting. Dr. Kim stood at the presentation screen, Henry and Claire flanking her. Patricia sat in the back, having run her own parallel analysis that confirmed every finding. "I'll be direct," Dr. Kim began. "The Human Values Division is not as alleged a drain on corporate resources. It is in fact the most profitable initiative Infinity has launched in the past 5 years." Douglas's expression froze. Direct costs are indeed $12 million per quarter, but comprehensive analysis reveals indirect benefits of $18 million per quarter. Net positive impact, $6 million quarterly, $24 million annually. Dr. Kim clicked through slides dense with data. More significantly, the trajectory is exponential. As human values becomes embedded in corporate culture, benefits compound. Year 2 projections, $40 million net benefit. Year 3, $65 million. "Those projections are speculative," Douglas said. "They're conservative. I'm seeing retention rates and recruitment advantages that traditional models can't predict. Companies that authentically invest in human capital create competitive moats that are extremely difficult to replicate." Dr. Kim pulled up comparison data. Infinity's employee satisfaction scores have increased 23%. Glassdoor ratings went from 3.2 to 4.6. You're now ranked as one of the top 10 employers in New York. That translates to lower hiring costs, better talent, higher performance. Jennifer was leaning forward now, studying the slides. These numbers are verified by 2 independent accounting firms and our own analysis. The Human Values Division isn't charity, it's strategy. Dr. Kim turned to Henry. "Mr. Miles built something remarkable. A system that treats human capital as actual capital, that invests in people as assets, not expenses. The ROI is undeniable." The room was silent. Then Douglas spoke, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "This is creative accounting, soft metrics dressed up as hard data." "No," Patricia said from the back of the room. All heads turned. "This is what happens when you actually measure what matters. I've spent 3 months working with Henry, reviewing every decision, checking every assumption. He's right. We've been measuring wrong for years, optimizing quarterly earnings while destroying long-term value." Douglas stood. "Patricia, you've been compromised by proximity to this project." "I've been educated by evidence." Patricia walked to the front, laid down her own report. "I was Henry's biggest skeptic. I thought he was naive, unqualified, a charity case. But I was wrong. He understands value creation in ways MBA programs don't teach, because he's lived the consequences of our decisions. He knows what we break when we prioritize profit over people." She looked at Douglas directly. "You wanted to fire 300 people to save $10 million. Henry found a way to save those people and make $24 million. You're not attacking him because he's wrong. You're attacking him because he's proving your entire philosophy is outdated." The challenge was naked brutal. Douglas's face flushed with rage. This board will not be lectured by a junior executive about corporate philosophy. "Then listen to a senior executive." Claire stood. "Douglas, you've fought me on every initiative I've proposed. You've undermined my authority, questioned my judgment, and tried to turn the board against me. But here's what you can't fight: results. Human values works. The data proves it. The audit confirms it. This company is stronger, more profitable, and more competitive because we chose to see people as humans first. And if your precious program fails, if these projections don't materialize, then I'll accept responsibility. But right now, today, with the evidence in front of us, we're succeeding, and you need to decide if you're going to support that success or keep fighting it." Jennifer cleared her throat. "I'd like to propose a motion that the Human Values Division be formally recognized as a permanent strategic initiative with increased budget allocation and board-level oversight. All in favor. 10 hands went up. Only Douglas and one other board member abstained. Motion passes. Jennifer looked at Douglas. I suggest you make peace with this new direction, because it's happening with or without your support. Douglas left without another word. His ally followed. The remaining board members congratulated Claire, shook Henry's hand, thanked Dr. Kim for her thorough analysis. When the room finally emptied, Henry collapsed into a chair. I think I'm going to throw up. You just won, Claire said, laughing with relief and joy. You proved that kindness is profitable, that humanity and business aren't enemies. We proved it. You, me, Patricia, Dr. Kim, all those people who believed. Henry looked at the report still lying on the table. But Douglas isn't going to stop. He's going to wait for us to fail. Then we won't fail. Claire's expression was fierce. We're going to make this so successful that other companies copy it. We're going to change how business operates, and Douglas can either adapt or become irrelevant. That night, Henry took Noah to dinner. Real dinner at a restaurant with tablecloths and menus that didn't have prices. They celebrated with steak and dessert, and stories about everything that had happened. Mom would be losing her mind right now, Noah said, grinning. You know she'd be calling everyone she knows, telling them her husband just changed corporate America. She'd be embarrassed by the attention. She'd be proud beyond words. Noah's expression turned serious. Dad, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about it for weeks. Henry's stomach clenched. What is it? I want to come back, live with you in the city, go to school here. Noah rushed through the words. Aunt Margaret's been great, but I want to be with you. Watch what you're building. Be part of it. Noah, are you sure you have friends upstate? A good school? I have my father here. That's what matters. Noah's voice cracked. I've watched you fight for 1.5 years to get back on your feet. Watched you give away your jacket. Watched you build something that helps people. I don't want to watch from a distance anymore. I want to be there. Henry felt tears burning in his eyes. You know I want that more than anything. Then let's make it happen. I talked to Aunt Margaret. She understands. And Claire already said she'd help find a good school. Noah smiled. Plus, somebody needs to make sure you eat real food and don't work yourself to death. They made plans. School transfers, apartment hunting, logistics that felt like miracles because they were normal, boring, beautiful family decisions. Henry walked Noah to the train station that night, hugged him goodbye with promises that this was temporary, that soon they'd be together permanently. On the way back to his apartment, Henry's phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Henry Miles? A woman's voice, older, gentle. Yes, who's this? My name is Evelyn Thomas. I heard about what you've been doing at Infinity Group, about the community center named after someone called Thomas. Henry's heart stopped. You're related to... Thomas was my brother. He worked as a janitor at St. Vincent's Hospital for 35 years. Died in 2003. Her voice wavered. I saw an article about your program, about Claire Langston saying a janitor gave her his coat when she was 7. That was Tommy. That was exactly something he'd do. Henry found a bench, sat down hard. He saved her life. Did you know that? I didn't, but I'm not surprised. Tommy gave away half his paycheck to people who needed it. Drove our mother crazy. He'd come home in winter without a coat because someone at the bus stop was cold. She laughed through tears. He died broke. Had nothing to leave us except a notebook full of names people he'd helped over the years, hundreds of them. Do you still have that notebook? I do. Been sitting in my closet for 20 years. I didn't know what to do with it. Would you be willing to let me see it? Maybe we could find some of those people. Tell them about Tommy, about how his kindness rippled forward. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Tommy always said kindness was an investment that paid dividends long after you're gone. I think he'd love seeing that proved true. They made plans to meet. Evelyn would bring the notebook. Henry would bring Claire. Together they'd uncover a network of kindness that stretched back decades. When Henry finally made it home, he found an envelope that had been slipped under his door. Inside, a note in Claire's handwriting. Henry, the board approved the budget expansion. We can help 500 families next year instead of 50. We're building something that will outlive us both. Thank you for giving away your jacket. Thank you for teaching me to see people again. And thank you for being brave enough to believe kindness matters. C. Below it, she'd drawn a simple sketch. 2 stick figures at a bus stop, one offering a jacket, the other accepting, and radiating outward from them, lines connecting to hundreds of other stick figures. A map of kindness spreading through a city, a company, a world. Henry pinned the drawing next to Noah's crayon masterpiece. Looked at them both in the lamplight of his apartment. His actual apartment, his actual home, his actual life, rebuilt from the ashes. 6 months ago, he'd been sleeping in a car, frozen and hopeless. Now he was changing how one of America's largest companies treated human beings. Now he was bringing his son home. Now he was uncovering a legacy of kindness that stretched back decades, all because of a jacket, and a choice, and the radical belief that helping someone else might save you too. Henry's phone buzzed one more time. Group text from Patricia to him, Claire, and the Human Values team. First day of Q3 tomorrow. Time to change the world. Who's ready? Claire responded immediately. Born ready? The team sent a stream of affirmations and excitement. Henry added his own message. Ready to give away more jackets, metaphorically speaking this time. Claire's response made him laugh. Better keep the literal jacket in the frame. We need it for inspiration. Henry looked out his window at Manhattan sparkling in the June night. Somewhere in this city, people were cold, hungry, desperate, making impossible choices between dignity and survival. But now there was a company trying to help. A program built on the crazy idea that treating people well was good business. A community center named after a janitor who'd given away his coat to a 7-year-old girl who grew up to become a CEO who never forgot. The circle was complete. The revolution was spreading. And it all traced back to one freezing night, one bus stop, one moment, when Henry Miles chose kindness over comfort. He'd given away his jacket thinking it was an ending. The last thing he had to give. The final gesture of a man who'd lost everything. He'd been wrong. It was a beginning. The start of something bigger than he could have imagined. Proof that the smallest acts carry the greatest weight. That kindness, even when it costs everything, is never wasted. That one small act can rewrite a life, a company, a world. Henry fell asleep that night with Noah's drawing on his nightstand and hope in his heart. Tomorrow he'd wake up and keep building, keep fighting, keep proving that humanity belonged in corporate America. But tonight he was just Henry, a father, a widower, a man who'd survived the impossible and found purpose in the wreckage. A man who'd given away his jacket and received everything in return. The jacket hung in its frame at Thomas's place, a testament to the power of choosing kindness. People visited it daily now. Touched the glass, read the plaque, remembered that change begins with choice. And every time someone saw it, every time someone heard the story, the revolution grew a little larger. One act of kindness, one frozen night, one choice that changed everything. That's all it takes to save a life, to start a movement, to prove that love in the end is the only investment that never fails. Henry had learned that at a bus stop. Claire had learned it from a janitor. Now they were teaching it to a company, a city, a world that had forgotten. And the lesson was simple, profound, true. See people, help them, choose kindness. Everything else follows.